My family tried to steal my inheritance. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. Sign it now, Claire, or don't pretend you cared about Grandma at all. That was the first thing Aunt Denise said to me 3 days after Evelyn Bennett was buried, while I was still wearing the black flats that had rubbed my heels raw at the cemetery. We were standing in my grandmother's front hallway under the stained glass lamp she'd bought in Santa Fe in 1998, and Denise was holding out a packet clipped with a yellow sticky note that said routine. Her manicure was perfect. Her mascara was perfect. Her grief was immaculate in the same way hotel flowers are immaculate, arranged, expensive, and dead. I didn't take the papers. The house smelled wrong. Not like Grandma's lavender hand cream and old books and coffee grounds in the sink. It smelled like lemon polish and strangers. Someone had vacuumed the runner rug. Someone had removed the umbrella stand by the door. Small things, stupid things, but I knew that house the way some people know scripture. I just got here, I said. What am I signing? Denise exhaled like I was exhausting. Administrative documents. Temporary authority, estate access, basic probate matters. Tyler and I are trying to keep this simple. Tyler leaned against the dining room archway with that loose, sympathetic face he used when he wanted money or forgiveness. Nobody's trying to screw you, Claire. Nobody says that unless they've at least considered it. I was 29, lived in a one-bedroom apartment 20 minutes away, and worked at a rehab clinic. I wasn't rich, impressive, or loud. In my family, that meant people talked over me until I suddenly became inconvenient. Grandma Evelyn never did that. She called me every Thursday at 7 and saved every birthday card I'd ever sent her in a blue lacquer box in her bedroom. Now Denise was blocking the stairs. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she said. Your grandmother changed a lot at the end. Something cold slid down my back. Changed how? Denise held my gaze too long. Tyler looked at the floor. Then I noticed the deadbolt on the front door gleaming brighter than the brass lock Grandma had used for years. And I realized they'd changed the house before telling me why. Before Grandma died, everybody in my family liked to pretend we were close in a holiday card way. We weren't. We were orbiting the same woman for different reasons. I was the one who took Evelyn to cardiology appointments and sat in the parking lot afterward while she complained about doctors who spoke too loudly, as if age had made her deaf instead of annoyed. I knew she liked her tea in a chipped blue mug because the handle fit her fingers better after arthritis got bad. I reset her Wi-Fi, labeled leftovers in her fridge, and listened when she told the same story twice because the second version usually held the truth. Denise was the daughter who performed competence. She swept in with pastries nobody asked for, used words like logistics and transition, and made sure people saw her carrying a folder. Tyler came less often, but when he did, he was all charm. He'd kiss Grandma's cheek, call her beautiful, and leave with cash folded into his palm like a trick nobody was supposed to notice. Evelyn noticed everything. One day, she told me last winter while we sorted old photos at her kitchen table, "Your aunt is going to organize my death like it's a charity luncheon." I laughed because she said it dryly, not because it was funny. That's a terrible thing to say. It's an accurate thing to say. She slid a Polaroid toward me. My mother was in it as a teenager, grinning beside a green station wagon. She died when I was 12, and Grandma almost never said her name unless the house was quiet. The pretty ones in this family think efficiency is love. It isn't. There had always been a hierarchy in the Bennett family, and I'd never ranked high in it. I was the daughter of the dead daughter. Loved, technically. Included, selectively. Denise had a polished way of speaking that made chaos sound responsible. Tyler had burned through jobs, girlfriends, and one boat he absolutely could not afford. Still, somehow, I was the one people called fragile. The last time all three of us ate dinner together before Evelyn got sick, Tyler joked that I was Grandma's favorite. Grandma set down her fork and said, "No, Claire is simply the only one here who listens." Tyler laughed. Denise did not. That was when something in her face quietly hardened. At the funeral, Denise wore dove gray instead of black and looked like a senator's widow. She stood near the guest book, greeting people with both hands, thanking them for coming, saying things like, "Mom wanted dignity," as if she had been appointed spokesperson for the dead. Tyler floated around the room carrying bottled water and murmuring to people he hadn't seen in years. His eyes were red, but not from crying. He looked tired in the jumpy way people look when they are running on caffeine, panic, and a story they're trying to keep straight. I stayed near the photos. There was one of Grandma in a cream suit, chin up, daring the camera to misbehave. There was one of her holding me on her lap when I was 6, both of us wearing paper crowns from Christmas crackers. That was grief I could handle, silent and private. After the service, people drifted into the side hall for coffee and sandwiches. I had barely taken a sip when Denise touched my elbow. "Claire, sweetheart, after everyone leaves, Mr. Feldman may stop by the house." I blinked. "Today?" "Just briefly. There are some preliminary estate matters we should streamline." My throat tightened. She was buried an hour ago. Denise's smile didn't move. Administrative deadlines don't pause for emotions. Tyler appeared beside her. "Mom's just trying to spare you stress." "By bringing up paperwork at the funeral?" I asked. Denise gave me a look reserved for children and unstable adults. "By making sure no one makes this harder than it already is." I might have let it go if not for what happened 10 minutes later. I stepped outside for air and saw Tyler near the hedge line, half hidden beside the side entrance, speaking urgently into his phone. "No, she doesn't know yet," he whispered. "Just get it filed before Monday." He turned and froze when he saw me. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. He shoved the phone into his jacket pocket. "A friend." "At Grandma's funeral?" He shrugged. "Life doesn't stop." When we got back to the house, Denise had already beaten us there. The dining room table was cleared. 3 folders sat in neat rows beside pens. Routine, apparently, had place settings. Then I saw Grandma's bedroom door locked with a key. The next morning I drove back to Grandma's house because I couldn't stop thinking about that locked bedroom. Evelyn never locked interior doors. She believed locked doors inside a family home meant either shame or theft, and she didn't tolerate either. Tyler's SUV was in the driveway. When I got to the porch, my key didn't fit. For a second I thought I was using the wrong one, even though the brass sunflower keychain was the exact one Grandma had given me 5 years earlier. I tried again. Nothing. The new deadbolt just stared back at me, bright and smug. Then Denise opened the door from inside like she had been standing there waiting. "Oh," she said. "You should have called. You changed the locks. We had to secure the property." "From who?" She folded her arms. "Claire, don't start." I stepped past her before she could stop me. The living room was too clean. The Afghan Grandma kept on the sofa was gone. So were the porcelain dogs from the mantel and the silver bowl where she dropped spare change. In the dining room, 2 banker's boxes sat taped shut by the wall. Where is everything? Being inventoried. By who? Professionals. That answer made me laugh. "You mean you and Tyler?" Tyler came in carrying another box from the hall closet. "You're acting like we robbed the place." The box flaps weren't fully sealed. Through the gap, I saw Grandma's monogrammed jewelry roll, the one she kept in the top dresser drawer with her mother's earrings and my mother's watch. "That shouldn't be in a hallway box," I said. Tyler shifted his grip. "It's being cataloged. Open it." Denise's voice snapped. "No." I looked from one to the other. "Where's Mr. Feldman?" "He's been informed," Denise said. I went upstairs anyway. Grandma's bedroom door was open now, but the room had been stripped in patches. The blue lacquer box from her dresser was missing. So was the tray where she kept her checkbook and stamps. The closet safe stood shut behind sweaters. "Where is her will copy?" I asked. "With the attorney," Denise said. "And the spare safe key?" Tyler looked at Denise. That was all I needed. The missing photo told me they were erasing more than property. That afternoon, Denise called me 6 times, then sent a text that said, "Please don't make this adversarial." When I didn't answer, Tyler sent one saying Mr. Feldman needed my signature on a temporary family administration consent. Totally standard. I went to Denise's house that night because part of me still wanted a reasonable explanation. Maybe grief was making me suspicious. Instead, Denise sat me at her kitchen island with tea I didn't want and slid over the packet again. "Initial here, sign there," she said. "This just lets me handle matters efficiently." I read the first page. Then the second. My hands were shaking. "This names you temporary personal representative," I said, "with authority to access accounts, secure valuables, and dispose of property. Only if necessary. It says I waive objection to your interim inventory." Denise's expression tightened. "Claire, these are routine steps." "No, they aren't. This gives you control before I even see a full asset list." Tyler laughed softly from the fridge. "Jesus, You sound like a podcast. I looked up. Why is everyone in such a hurry? Denise set down her cup. Because your grandmother's house has bills, insurance, utilities, taxes, and because dragging this out helps no one. Reading before signing is not dragging it out. Her face changed then. Do you know what people will think if you start challenging things? That you're circling a dead woman's estate like a vulture. I stared at her. You had folders out at the funeral. I handled your mother's arrangements too, she said. Someone has to be the adult in this family. Denise had managed the casseroles, the florist, the church, and spent the next decade treating competence like ownership. You don't get to use her, I said. Denise leaned forward. Then stop behaving like a child and sign. I stood up so fast the stool scraped. I'm taking this to my own lawyer. Tyler's smile vanished. There is no your own lawyer. There's the family attorney. I grabbed my bag. Denise didn't raise her voice. If you walk out without signing, she said, don't blame me for what your grandmother's final decisions say about you. That was when she claimed Grandma had cut me out. The first hard proof landed in my lap by accident, which is how the worst things usually happen. 2 days after Denise tried to guilt me into signing, I stopped by Grandma's house again on my lunch break. Nobody answered, but the neighbor was trimming roses next door. She lowered her shears when she saw me. You're Claire, right? I nodded. She glanced at the house and walked closer to the fence. I didn't want to interfere at the funeral, but your aunt and that son of hers were here very late the night before your grandmother passed. My skin went prickly. Late how? After midnight. I saw them because my dog needed out. The porch light was on, and they were carrying boxes to the car. She hesitated. Then 2 days later, they came back with a locksmith. A locksmith? I asked. I wrote the company name down because it struck me as odd. Your grandma was still alive when they changed something at the side door. I remember because the ambulance hadn't come yet. For a second, I just stared at her. What deck? She went inside and came back with an envelope from a hardware store. On the back, she had written the date and time in blue ink. March 14th, 11:42 p.m. Grandma died at 6:10 a.m. on March 15th. You're sure? I asked. She looked offended. Honey, I'm old, not fictional. At work, I couldn't focus. At 3:30, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification from a number I didn't know. I almost deleted it. Instead, I played it in the supply closet. Claire, this is your grandmother's night caregiver from last month, a woman said. I don't know if I should be calling, but your aunt asked me to change the medication log after one visit, and that didn't sit right with me. Please call me back before I decide whether I need an attorney. I played it twice, then a third time. By the time I called her back, my hands were steady. Grief was still there, huge and wet and suffocating, but suspicion had finally hardened into shape. For the first time, I knew Denise was lying about more than paperwork. I met the caregiver in the back corner of a diner off Route 8 because she didn't want to be seen at Grandma's house again. She was younger than I expected, wearing scrubs under a coat and twisting a paper napkin into threads while she talked. I only worked nights twice a week, she said. Your grandmother was clear, sharp, and very particular. She kept her own medication chart on the kitchen counter. Then one morning your aunt asked me to rewrite one entry because she said I'd used the wrong time. Did you? She shook her head. No, I wrote the correct time. I remember because your grandmother refused the evening dose until after she finished a phone call with you. Do you still have a copy? I took photos when your aunt started pressuring me. She slid her phone across the table. 2 images showed the same page. In the first, the March 14th pain medication was logged at 9:10 p.m. In the second, it had been rewritten to 7:40 p.m. with initials that looked copied, not natural. Your aunt said if anyone asked, your grandmother was sleepy and confused by 8. Grandma had called me at 8:12 that night to remind me to take the lemon loaf out of my freezer because cake shouldn't die in cold storage. She hadn't sounded sleepy. She'd sounded annoyed because Tyler was clattering around in the hallway. After the diner, I took a personal day and drove downtown to the probate court. The clerk behind the window looked bored until I gave Evelyn's full name. A petition for temporary estate authority had already been submitted, filed Monday morning at 8:17 a.m. by Denise Bennett. Attached was a statement claiming closest family members are in agreement. I hadn't agreed to anything. I paid for copies and left with a manila envelope under my arm, my heartbeat loud in my ears. On the sidewalk outside, my phone buzzed. Tyler, Where are you? He asked. At work. That's weird, he said lightly. I just drove past your office parking lot. The air seemed to thin around me. You're following me now? I asked. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Relax. Mom just wants us all on the same page. I finally understood how small Denise thought my life was. She really believed I could be washed back into obedience. The false story reached me through Mr. Feldman, and somehow that made it worse. I called his office the next morning expecting him to dodge me, but instead he asked me to come in. He was in his 60s, spare and careful, with silver glasses and a voice that never rose above a courtroom whisper. He closed the door, folded his hands, and said, Your aunt has represented that your grandmother intended to revise her estate plan in the final week of her life. My stomach dropped. Revise how? He slid a copy across the desk. A one-page document labeled codicil, dated March 14th, the night before Grandma died. According to it, the house would pass to Denise in recognition of caregiving burdens. Tyler would receive the contents of a storage unit and certain investment proceeds, and I would receive a specific bequest of $10,000 with love and appreciation. $10,000. Not because I expected more, but because Evelyn had spent years telling me, very plainly, that she intended the house to be sold and divided between Denise and me, with my mother's share passing to me. She had said it often enough that I stopped thinking of it as money and started thinking of it as proof that my mother had not been edited out of the family tree. There's no way she wrote this, I said. Mr. Feldman didn't nod. He also didn't defend it. Your aunt says your grandmother was upset by your distance. My distance? I almost laughed. I saw her 4 times a week. He studied me. Your aunt also stated your grandmother felt you were emotionally unstable after the hospitalization in January. I stared at him. The panic attack? I had one panic attack in the ER waiting room after Grandma's test results. He gave the smallest shrug. It was framed as a pattern. It was such a clean lie. Not dramatic. Just plausible enough to spread if nobody challenged it. The grieving granddaughter who was too delicate, too absent, too overwhelmed to be trusted. Denise hadn't only tried to take the inheritance. She had built a version of me designed to make people believe I should lose it. Then Mr. Feldman opened a drawer and placed a second document beside the first, and I recognized my grandmother's real signature the instant I saw it. The real scheme came together in layers, each one uglier than the last. Mr. Feldman couldn't give me everything outright, but he could tell me what troubled him. Evelyn had executed her actual will 2 years earlier in his office. He had supervised it personally. The signature on the codicil looked right at a glance, but the pressure marks were wrong, the slant was hesitant, and the witness line carried the name of a notary he had never worked with. He had already asked for verification and received delays, excuses, and a claim that the family preferred privacy. Privacy, another word Denise used when she meant control. I left his office and drove to the bank branch Grandma used. I wasn't on her accounts, so they couldn't tell me balances, but a manager confirmed one narrow thing when I showed my ID and the probate notice. Someone had attempted to access her safe deposit box the morning after her death with a temporary letter that had not yet been accepted. Who? I asked. The manager's face went neutral. I can't disclose names. Was it more than one person? A pause. Yes. That was enough. Later that evening, I parked across from Tyler's apartment because I hated myself for even thinking it, but hated not knowing more. At 7:14, he came out carrying a plastic grocery bag in a flat black case I recognized instantly. Grandma's document folio. The one she kept in the closet safe behind her winter sweaters. He tossed both into his trunk and drove off. I followed him to a storage facility on the edge of town. Through the chain-link fence, I watched him punch in a code and disappear down row C. When he left, I drove home shaking so hard I had to sit on my kitchen floor before I trusted my knees. There it was, the rushed filing, the late-night boxes, the rewritten medication log, the fake codicil, the safe deposit attempt, the hidden storage unit. Not random grief behavior. A sequence. By then I understood the outline. Denise had needed Evelyn groggy enough to be contradicted, Tyler reckless enough to move things fast, and a paper trail just clean enough to call me paranoid. I thought that was the worst of it. Then the caregiver texted me one more photo, and I saw how they had timed everything. The photo the caregiver sent was a screenshot of Denise's text from March 14th at 6:51 p.m. Give her the stronger dose after Claire leaves. We need a quiet night. I read it sitting in my parked car outside my apartment and felt something inside me go very still. Until then, I had been collecting clues. That text made it personal in a way even the fake codicil hadn't. Denise had not only moved too fast after the death, she had been arranging the conditions before it. I should have gone straight to Mr. Feldman. Instead, I made the mistake grief always tempts you into. One last family conversation. Denise invited me to Sunday dinner by text, as if nothing was wrong. Come eat. We're all exhausted. Let's be adults. I went because some ugly, hopeful part of me still wanted one person to confess before I dragged strangers into it. Dinner lasted 14 minutes before it detonated. Tyler poured wine nobody touched. Denise served baked chicken from a white ceramic dish I recognized from Grandma's kitchen and said, "We need to stop this spiral." "What spiral?" I asked. "The one where you mistake grief for persecution." I laughed once. "That's rich." Tyler leaned back. "You have always done this, Claire. When you feel left out, you invent motives." "Left out?" I said. "You changed locks before Grandma died." Denise's fork paused in midair, but only for a second. "That is an insane accusation. I have a witness. I have dates." "You have anxiety," she said softly, and that word hit me harder than if she had shouted. "And I am not going to let you weaponize your instability against this family." I stared at her. "You told people Grandma thought I was unstable." "Maybe because she did," Denise snapped. "She loved you, but she worried you were too emotional to manage money." The room blurred. Tyler saw it happen and pressed harder. "She pitied you," he said. "That's not the same as trusting you." I stood so fast my chair hit the floor. "You were talking about a woman you drugged and lied to." Silence. Tyler looked at Denise. Denise looked at me with naked hatred and said, "If you try to ruin us, you'd better be absolutely sure." Then she reached for her phone, and I understood she was about to do something I hadn't anticipated. What stopped me from folding was not courage. It was paperwork. The morning after that dinner, Mr. Feldman called and asked if I could come in immediately. Denise had emailed his office overnight demanding a hearing date and attaching a scanned copy of the codicil along with an urgent family statement about my emotional volatility. She was trying to move before I could, so I moved faster. For 6 straight hours, Mr. Feldman and I built a timeline. We laid everything across his conference table until grief started to look like evidence. March 14th, 6:51 p.m. Denise texting the caregiver to delay the stronger dose until after I left. March 14th, 8:12 p.m. Grandma calling me, alert and irritated. March 14th, 9:10 p.m. Original medication log. March 14th, 11:42 p.m. Locksmith at the side door while Evelyn was still alive. March 15th, 8:17 a.m. Denise's petition filed with the court claiming family agreement that never existed. Then came signature comparisons. Mr. Feldman pulled Evelyn's prior will, 2 letters she'd mailed him, and a signed property tax appeal from the year before. Same downward flourish on the E. Same hard angle in the B. The codicil had the shape, but none of the pressure. We subpoenaed the notary information listed on the document. The response came by afternoon. No record of service on March 14th, and the seal number belonged to a commission that had expired the previous year. Tyler had also made a mistake. Under attorney request, the storage facility manager confirmed that Unit C, 114 had been rented in Tyler's name on March 15th at 9:26 a.m., less than 3 hours after Evelyn died. By 5 o'clock, the conference table held copies of the caregiver screenshots, the neighbor's written note, court filings, signature samples, the notary response, and an email Denise had sent Mr. Feldman 2 weeks earlier asking whether immediate interim control can be obtained before all beneficiaries are notified. He leaned back, took off his glasses, and said, "Your aunt's case survives only if no one sees all of this at once." "So let's make sure they do," I said. Mr. Feldman nodded and scheduled a formal estate conference for Tuesday morning. Then Denise left me a voicemail that made my blood turn to ice. Her voicemail arrived at 9:14 that night. "Claire, listen carefully," Denise said, voice calm and almost tender. "If you embarrass this family in public, I will tell every person in that room about your panic attack, your therapy, your missed workdays, and every time Grandma called me worried about you." Think very hard about how much humiliation you can actually survive. I saved it. Tuesday morning, Mr. Feldman's conference room felt colder than court. Denise sat at one end of the table in a cream blazer with a legal pad and a face arranged into patience. Tyler looked hungover and furious. I sat across from them with my hands folded so tightly my knuckles ached. Mr. Feldman remained standing, which meant he was done being diplomatic. "We are here," he said, "because competing claims have been made about Evelyn Bennett's estate and intent." Denise gave a weary sigh. "There are no competing claims. Only Claire's grief." Mr. Feldman didn't even look at her. He passed out a packet. First page. Denise's petition filed on March 15th stating all interested family members agreed to her temporary authority. Next page. My written objection, time-stamped before any authority was granted. Third. The locksmith record and the neighbor's statement placing Denise and Tyler at the house before Evelyn died. Fourth. The medication log photographs. Fifth. Denise's text directing the caregiver to delay a stronger dose until after I left. Sixth, the notary commission response. Seventh, the signature comparison. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Tyler was the first to crack. "Mom." Denise didn't answer. She was staring at the caregiver text with a look I had never seen on her face before. Not grief. Not anger. Calculation. Mr. Feldman pressed play on a speakerphone message. Denise's threat from the night before filled the room in perfect, poisonous clarity. When it ended, Tyler pushed back from the table so fast his chair screeched. "You told me she changed it," he said. "You said Grandma wanted this." Denise turned on him instantly. "Don't you dare do this now." "Did she?" I asked. "Did she say that, Denise?" Nobody moved. Then Tyler looked at the codicil, looked at his mother, and folded. He opened his mouth because he finally feared Denise more than me. Tyler confessed in fragments, the way weak people usually tell the truth, only when silence becomes riskier. "I didn't write it," he said first. Denise hissed, "Stop talking." He ignored her. His face had gone gray. "She asked me to move things. That's all. Boxes, jewelry, papers. She said the house would be chaos after the funeral and that Grandma had promised me the storage contents anyway." "You forged a legal document," Mr. Feldman said. Tyler shook his head too fast. "No. I found the notary guy. Mom handled the paper." Denise stood up. "My son is exhausted and confused." "Sit down," Mr. Feldman said. Tyler did sit, but only because his knees seemed to give out. Once he started, the words kept coming. Denise had told him Evelyn was slipping, that Claire was too unstable, that if they didn't act quickly, I would drag the estate through court and bleed it dry. She had him rent the storage unit, remove valuables from the house before anyone could inventory them, and attempt access to the safe deposit box with a draft letter sheet prepared. A cleaner arrangement, I repeated when he admitted Denise kept using that phrase. "You mean one where my mother's side disappears?" That finally broke whatever was left of Denise's composure. She turned to me with a face I barely recognized. "Your mother disappeared on her own. She married badly, left us with the cleanup, and died before anyone else could. Don't stand there acting like you inherited sainthood from tragedy." The room went silent. There it was. Not caregiving. Not efficiency. Not misunderstanding. The motive underneath all of it. Old resentment. Old envy. Old contempt sharpened by money. "Mr. Feldman spoke carefully. Given these admissions, I will be notifying the court that the petition must be withdrawn and that potential fraud has occurred." Denise laughed once, brittle and ugly. "And you think this little martyr wins? There will be fees, delays, taxes, publicity. She'll lose years." Maybe she meant it as a threat. Maybe as comfort for herself. Either way, I looked at her and realized I was done negotiating with people who mistook endurance for weakness. Then Tyler said one more thing that made the whole room freeze. "There's more in the unit," Tyler said, staring at the table. Denise whipped toward him so fast I thought she might hit him. Mr. Feldman didn't blink. "What more?" Tyler swallowed. "The jewelry roll, the silver, the photo albums, her handwritten ledger, and the blue box." My breath caught. The blue lacquer box held every card I had ever sent Evelyn, along with letters from my mother and a sealed envelope Grandma once told me was for later, if later gets ugly. Denise hadn't only tried to take money. She had taken memory too. Within 48 hours, The storage unit was opened and inventoried. I was there with Mr. Feldman, a court-approved administrator, and a deputy who looked bored until the jewelry started coming out in labeled freezer bags. Grandma's monogrammed roll. My mother's watch. The silver serving set Denise swore had already been appraised. 3 framed photos. The document folio. And at the bottom of a plastic tote, the blue lacquer box wrapped in one of Grandma's pillowcases. I cried when I saw it. Not elegantly. Not privately. The kind of crying that folds your ribs inward and leaves you ashamed even while it saves you. The legal consequences were slow and expensive. Denise withdrew her petition before the court could rule on temporary authority. Mr. Feldman filed a formal objection to the codicil and referred the matter for investigation. Tyler signed a statement admitting he removed property without authorization. There was no dramatic handcuff moment, just reputations collapsing in fluorescent rooms. 6 months later, the real was admitted. The proceeds were divided the way Evelyn had always said, half to Denise, half representing my mother's share through me. Tyler got a small trust distribution with no control over anything. I started therapy again, this time because I wanted to stay whole instead of because Denise had decided it meant I was weak. I refused every attempt at private reconciliation that did not begin with written acknowledgement of what they had done. The sealed envelope from Grandma sat in the blue box for 3 days before I was brave enough to open it. Inside was one sentence in Evelyn's narrow, furious handwriting. The note said, "If anyone tells you I meant to leave you less, they are lying." That was it. One sentence. No speech from beyond the grave. No movie-perfect blessing. Just Evelyn, all the way to the end. Direct, unsentimental, and impossible to misquote. I keep that note in my apartment now, tucked inside a frame beside the photo Denise stole from the nightstand. It's a picture of my mother at 19, laughing into the wind, with Evelyn behind her squinting at the sun like even daylight needed managing. For months after the probate mess ended, I thought winning would feel triumphant. It didn't. It felt quiet, expensive, necessary, like finally setting a bone that had healed crooked. People love saying money brings out the worst in families. I don't think that's exactly true. I think death removes the audience, and money reveals the script people were already carrying in their pockets. Denise didn't become controlling because Grandma died. Tyler didn't become reckless because an inheritance existed. They were already those people. Grief just gave them a costume they thought would excuse it. I still miss Evelyn in ordinary ways that have nothing to do with estates. When the weather changes, I still reach for my phone on Thursdays at 7. I still see a chipped blue mug in a store and have to stand very still. Some losses stay domestic like that. Small enough to fit in your hand, heavy enough to bend a whole day. As for Denise, we don't speak. Tyler sent one apology email that spent too much time explaining his stress and not enough time naming the theft. I didn't answer. Boundaries are not punishments. Sometimes they are just the first honest thing left. If you're dealing with inheritance pressure, read everything before you sign. Get copies. Write down dates. Save voicemails. Grief makes people want relief, and manipulative relatives know that. Confusion is where they do their best work.